Hi, thanks everyone for joining us here today. We are grateful that you took the time to share in our discussion. I am honored to welcome our two panelists, Tracy Briscoe, VP of Transformation at Whole Foods Market, and Rich Nanda, best-selling author and leader of Deloitte's Strategy and Analytics practice. My name is Dana Swanson Switzer, and I am Deloitte's lead client principal with Whole Foods Market, and I serve clients across their transformation agendas. Welcome to Transform, Rinse, and Repeat, Deloitte's monthly executive conversation series where we unpack our clients' strategies on how to navigate market disruptions and drive successful enterprise transformations. Tracy, I'll hand it off to you for a quick intro before passing the mic to Rich.
Hey, Dana, thank you. Thanks for having me. And Rich, thanks for being here with me as well. So as Dana said, I am Tracy Briscoe. I have been part of the Whole Foods Market team for about 20 years. I started my career in technology. So my focus had really been around developing, enabling automation through technology, evangelizing agile ways of team working, and really focusing on cross-functional business programs. About a year ago, I moved into a role at Whole Foods Market called Business Transformation. And so since then, I have been leading my team as well as some cross-functional business programs.
Great. Tracy, thanks so much for joining us. Dana, thanks for kicking us off. I'm Rich Nanda, partner here at Deloitte. In my day job, I serve consumer products clients. So very excited to talk to Tracy about the changes happening at Whole Foods Markets. And I also lead our strategy and analytics practice, where we put out the book last year, the Transformation Myth, which dug into how companies are managing innovative and disruptive times by continually changing themselves. And it's fun to have guests like Tracy on to bring those ideas to life for our guests. So thanks all for joining.
Fantastic. Well, audience members, I want to remind you this is a live conversation. We welcome your questions in the chat window. The panel will address selected questions throughout this interactive conversation. And with that, I'd love to start with a broad question for you, Tracy, about Whole Foods Market. So it's renowned for its deep connection to all stakeholders along the value chain, its suppliers, its team members, its communities. Can you elaborate on what we've seen as these win-win relationships and how they've differentiated Whole Foods? Maybe for those who don't know the founding story, what is the origin of Whole Foods and its purpose-driven culture?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So if you think about Whole Foods is like the center of this Venn diagram, and Whole Foods as a conscious company. And then you think about the outer circles that surround Whole Foods. So we have our stakeholder group, we have our purpose, we have our culture, and then we have our leadership, and how all of these things work together. So specifically, the question around stakeholders is like there's an intrinsic and extrinsic value that all stakeholders can provide to one another. And as Whole Foods, our purpose to nourish people and the planet is really meant to inspire and energize those stakeholders. And then as we move around that circle, the leadership aspect is to take into account that value that we can provide to our stakeholders. And that shows up in the fabric of how we operate. So over here on the left-hand side is like our culture piece of things. All of that works together in this conscious way so that we harmonize what we're bringing to our stakeholders. So that's been more popularized, I think, through like conscious leadership, conscious capitalism. But for me at Whole Foods, my experience is it's been that way for me since the beginning. And it shows up in everything we do. It can seem a little awkward to folks who are new to Whole Foods or team members new to Whole Foods or external folks that we work with because it can be a process that takes a little time to get through, right? When you're evaluating your decision making through a set of stakeholder lenses and trying to harmonize the outcome of those decisions, it doesn't always happen immediately. And so that's something that I think is unique, and what makes it special to work here at Whole Foods is like coming at everything that we attempt to do from a transformation office perspective with that lens of conscious capitalism and harmonizing stakeholders.
What I think is so great, Tracy, about what you said is, purpose isn't something that was just invented because ESG and corporate responsibility became important, in the broader economy. It's so true to who Whole Foods is as an organization. In fact, it was there from the birth of the organization. And across companies, what we see is that, if you're faking purpose and social responsibility, then it's very apparent to all the stakeholders in the organization, and those then aren't successful endeavors. But when purpose is at the core of who the company is, and therefore how they engage with customers, how they create competitive advantages, then it's this self-reinforcing mechanism to continue to lean into that purpose, to give back to all the stakeholders and make the company better over time.
I love that. And I do think some of what you called out in the unique fabric of Whole Foods Market and how it was founded, which Rich hit on, also impacts transformation. And you mentioned kind of decision making and how that looks. So I'll pull on that a little bit. Some of Deloitte's clients take a top-down, leadership-driven approach to enterprise transformation, while others look at it more grassroots, bottoms up, kind of a decentralized approach. How do you envision Whole Foods' unique approach as it begins its transformation journey?
I think it's both, Dana. So both top down and bottoms up. I like to operate from this space of both and. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. So both these things that may seem like polarizing differences. So either you need to be top down or you need to be bottoms up. I try to hold both to be true. And I experience Whole Foods in that way. And are Rich or Dana, are either of you familiar with like polarity management? I had the opportunity this past year to do some learning in that space. I had a coach who really kind of instilled that in me. And so I like to think about it when I'm answering this question about the top down and bottoms up. So we think about the top down as like the strategic direction, right? So in our stakeholder orientations, like the pyramid's like this, like our leadership team sits at the bottom of that in this very servant leadership way, where everything, like we're constantly listening for feedback from our stakeholders, right? And then filtering that down in order to help us set the strategy as in one piece of it. And the other thing that's top down is like the pace of change. Like our executive team has to set the pace, and they have to be aligned with one another on what that pace looks like. And then the bottoms up piece of it for us is really figuring out the how. So we think about top down as the, like, what is it that we're going to try to achieve from a transformation perspective? And then the bottoms up is like, how do we go get this done? And so that alignment from both ends is really important. And then the role that I and my team play there is like, we're like the translators between those two levels. We have the benefit of having direct access to the executive team at the top. And then we also have the benefit of being like integrated and side by side with the bottoms up, like with our fellow team members and how we're going to get the work done. So the thing that we help do in the middle is help promote that pace of change, and also promote this idea that it's good to think about change is always happening. Like I support and appreciate when a leader might say to me something like, well, transformation is happening all the time. Like in a particular business area, you know, they're transforming. Like it's not just something that is, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, thanks, Dana. And so when I think about like being very specific about what is transformation, one of the things that we did right away last year was like we had to define what we mean when we say transformation at Whole Foods. So we had to define it so that the executive team knew what they were saying when they said transformation, and also when we talked about it with others. And so we had to like bring that into our culture of like this definition of transformation. The other thing we had to do had to be able to do in this bottoms down and tops down, bottoms up that way, is know how to say no. So in our like way of working, we are we're very accommodating. Like we want to do the best for one another, right? Back to the stakeholder model, like we're all in it together, this idea of shared fate. And so we want to help as a team member, I want to help my fellow team member be successful. There are times when I have to draw the box around a transformation portfolio and say, this is what transformation means. So the work that you're asking me to engage in, or you're asking my team to engage in, like we have to say no. So we had to set up that structure, and internally, it's not been just like an easy thing to do, right? They can't just be the words on the paper that define it or the litmus test that we run our work through, but it actually have to set up the ways of working around it to make it effective.
I'm going to pull on something Rich said earlier, which was Whole Foods Market was kind of ahead on purpose before purpose became something that all companies were thinking about. And I might put this also in that same bucket. You know, I also get the privilege of working with a number of tech companies and listening to your employees and team members, and that voice increasing in importance has become a big trend, probably not just in tech, but in other industries. And what you're describing for those that maybe grew up in more traditional top-down environments sounds like a lot of work, a lot more work to manage those polarities, to manage those kind of potentially or perceived to be conflicting views and priorities, and to do all of those, that extra navigation. So I'm gonna pull on that thread a little bit, and I'd love to hear a little bit about what are the kind of speed bumps or challenges that you face as you're beginning this transformation journey and you're setting out what is transformation for Whole Foods.
Yeah, I'm giggling, Dana, because some of that is like, I'm going to say like name dropping. So our way of working here is not to name drop. Like it's rare that somebody's going to do something because Tracy says we're going to do it this way. And so to have this remit from our executive team, and to sometimes need to say like, I'm here because the executive team says this is a transformational program, and like we're going to work together. So that's one of the first speed bumps, is just being like, hey, here I am, like we're going to do this thing together. And the reactions to that is can sometimes be like, we already tried this. Like, sure, you're here now, but like we tried this last year, or we tried this a couple of years ago, and so like, why is it going to be any different now? Or I love this one, like we haven't done that for the last 40 years. Like, why would we need to start doing it now? Like we've been successful as a company, we haven't done that for 40 years. Like why are you coming to tell me that we need to do it now? So like overcoming that speed bump is like, I gotta take data with me, right? I have to take the facts with me. I also have to listen with empathy for the story. Like I need to realize that like I am not the first one to come along and try something. And so learning from this other leader who's saying like, yeah, we already tried that. I'm like, what could we do differently, right? Let's be self-reflective. What could we do differently? The other thing is the cost and investment. So that's a big headwind for us, is like the investment that it takes, like hard money, right? That investment that it takes to actually see a return and a change, and then like track that thread all the way through. Like value realization is a speed bump for us. we've done a really nice job over the last few years of like setting top level goals. We've got, a process around that. But when we say like, we're going to spend this much and we hope to get this much for it, or, here are 3 goals in like this, all of our multi-years, here's what this turns out to look like. Like we are just starting to flex that muscle. So that's a speed bump. And then like our systems agility, both people and process and the technology of things, like we are not built internally to move quickly. So overall agility for us is a bump we are trying to overcome. And one of the ways that we're trying to overcome that is like it's beating the pavement, right? It's out there, getting in front of our CTO, talking with him, talking with leaders on his team, getting them thinking about and energized for not just like the feature sets that are going to enable like new business capabilities, but also like some of the things we have to go back and fix that are part of the foundation. And then the last speed bump for us is a lack of focus. So we have some amazing ideas. Like we have an amazing executive team, amazing ideas coming from like that, grassroots sort of ideas, which can lead to a bifurcation of focus. And so bringing everybody back together, say, okay, hang on. Like we can change what's in our transformation portfolio. Like we can add new things. But like we also have to be willing to take things out so that we can have that privilege of focus of like, what are the top X number of things that we're going to deliver, and like staying focused on like deliver those things until such a time as we say like that's done or we're finished, we're not going to make it, and then that goes out and something else comes in.
I think a lot of organizations can relate to, especially what you laid out up front, which was the baggage that every individual carries with them around the topic of transformation, and then specific initiatives, or I've tried that before, what makes not just this new version of the program different, but the timing different. And then I think some of the examples that you walk through are also really relatable, particularly where you landed around prioritization in an environment where the opportunities are often greater than your time and your budget and your resourcing.
Definitely.
Rich, do we have you back?
Yeah. Hey, Dana, I think I'm sorry, guys. The connection's a little choppy on my end, but I think you're asking me to follow up on the speed bumps comment. And I think the first thing I would say is Tracy nailed kind of speed bumps from this lens of things you have to anticipate are going to come as you rinse and repeat transformations. And so transformation's a capability and a muscle, and the things she talked about, were perfect. So I think it's just worth emphasizing, that first. And then the other idea is speed bumps are going to come in all kind of flavors from inside and outside the organization, whether it's new technologies that become available or macroeconomic conditions, and speed bumps many times are opportunities. And so it's thinking about, okay, if we're getting some change of direction from the outside, from the economy, from competitors, how do we use this as an opportunity? And as you build transformation as a muscle, then you can seize those as opportunities rather than threats.
Yeah, Rich, I had to limit my speed bumps to like 4. I remember last year somebody told me like the role that you're in transformation, you're going to frequently get like kicked in the face. And I'm like, oh, like that's so harsh. Like, oh, I don't ever want to think about that analogy again. And then now oftentimes I'm like, whoa, that felt kind of like a kick in the face. But like this spirit of resiliency, like, okay, like that can be okay. Like pull yourself back up, go back in, is a way to think about like it is going to be tough, but keeping my head up and keeping going.
If we keep on the theme of speed bumps, because I imagine there's a few head nods out there in the LinkedIn world right now. with your background in technology, how have you seen technology maybe help smooth out some of those speed bumps, or maybe what do you see in the future as opportunities for technology or some other advancements to help enable you manage through some of those challenges that you mentioned?
Yeah, that's a good question. And also, gosh, I could take that so many different ways, Dana. Like, I'll approach it very practically. One of the ways that we overcome that speed bump is that we go around it. And so in areas where we need to move quickly and the technology might not be ready, like we figure out the path to go around it. And then how long can we sustain that path around it before we actually have to come back over and then, go back over the speed bump. And so we're trying to identify what are those moments where it's okay to go around the speed bump, and then what are the moments where we have to wait until we have enough power to go over it. And so one of the accelerants for Whole Foods is really our ability to leverage our parent company and maximize what we can do for Whole Foods that we can also be doing in partnership with our parent company. So that's one of the ways that we are able to overcome that speed bump around technology. And then I mentioned this before, some of it is we're rebuilding the foundation. Our technology team is focused on rebuilding the foundation, everything from our ERP for item to our ERP for financials. All of those systems are getting changed out right now. And so that means the transformation roadmap has to account for all of these. If you all could see this beautiful mind mapping, actually, I think Deloitte helped us with this sort of mind mapping of technology and what that foundation looks like. And now my team is taking, we're putting our arrows all over the place with our transformation roadmap that sits on top of it. And then we step back and look at it and are okay, yes, this is going to happen. So that's some of the way that we're coming over that speed bump. And then the other is that it goes back to an investment too, right? I mean, we are asking more of our technology team than ever before, which, being part of that team just about a year and a half ago, I could have thought could never be true. How could there be more demand on this tech team than what there currently is? But that it is real, and it is truly an enabler for what we're trying to do in transformation.
If I continue to dig a little bit on your background in technology, it's interesting because that is such a strong capability to bring to the table that, to this new role that incorporates strategy, people, process, and technology together. It is an interesting shift, though, in your career, and I would love to hear your perspective on that choice to make the shift, and maybe why take a risk like that and move into this new space.
Yeah, so I was on a journey in tech for sure. Having started out, that was what my degree is in, and that's what I thought my future was going to be, and the more experience that I had with these large cross-functional applications that my teams were supporting and my teams were building, the more insight I was getting into the businesses, right? So how the businesses were operating, what their needs were, what their challenges were. And so I became much more interested in the problem-solving aspect of the strategy of in the people and process of things than the actual technology. And so I had asked for some help from a mentor to either help me find something outside of Whole Foods or help me find something inside of Whole Foods that could really put to use the investment that Whole Foods had made in me as a leader and as a person. And a couple of weeks later, this opportunity was brought to me from our executive team that said, hey, we think with your background and your experiences, you would be great to lead our transformation team. And so like my personality is such that like when a door opens, unless there's something super scary on the other side, I'm gonna go right through it. And so I did, and I think that like it's roses and thorns, right? So my background in technology means that I have a really high bar for what our technology team can deliver, and like my expectations are really high, and I'm also really impatient with it. At the same time, like the thorn of it is like I know everything that's coming against them, like all the headwinds that they're facing, all of the work that's being requested of them. And so like I've got to balance that knowledge that I have of like how the state of our systems today with the forward thinking to like the state of our systems, 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and like really keep our business stakeholders focused on what things can be, and don't just get stuck in saying no because the technology isn't necessarily where we want it to be today. And I get, that is some of like what I face on a regular basis is like people just saying, well, we're just not going to do anything until the tech's in place. It's like that's not an option. And so like going back and saying like knowing how to navigate too, I think within the technology organization, like knowing how to navigate through like who might can like get us more information, or who might could help us get this prioritized, that sort of thing has been of benefit as well. In terms of the switch of like technology to transformation, like you said, and kind of like the question that you're asking me, like it's a beautiful blend of all the things that I would get really energized by, and where I feel like I can do my best work, or I kind of get in that flow. And moving from being the subject matter expert to being now in the learner mode has been a great challenge for me personally. So that's some of why I wanted to do it. I'm a big fan of Roosevelt's speech around the man in the arena. Are either one of you familiar with that?
Not, no.
Okay, well, Google it after this. Look it up after this. Essentially, it's like better to be in the arena with dust on your face and blood, sweat, and tears than to be on the sidelines just watching in your comfort space where it's kind of cold and frigid. Better to be in the arena. And so one of my mentors shared that with me as I was going through a leadership development program, and I really that just really resonated with me. Better just like get in there and try, even if you're gonna like fall flat on your face, and sometimes I do, and then just like get up, dust that business off, and keep going at it. So for me, that was worth like taking the risk, because I mean, like on a personal note, I really kind of become stagnant, right? I was just like a little bit of a robot doing my job in enterprise back office systems for so long that I came to this realization, like where I was spending my time and where my like personal value set, like it was way away from the other. So there was some incongruency for me personally. So like I asked for help at Whole Foods, like help me bring this back together. And the great thing is like I have the support that's needed here to be able to do it.
As you were going through that quote, it hit me. I think I'll give a shout out to Brene Brown, because I think she actually called out that quote in one of her TED Talks. And I love it in the spirit of transformation, because each initiative, especially when you're talking about big T transformation, there's so many unknowns that in order to even move forward, you have to have that practice and that muscle built. There have been a couple of good questions that have come in from folks that I wanted to hit on. And it really goes back to, if we channel what you were sharing about your own personal risks in transformation, this balance of learning and experimentation, kind of test and learn. What does that look like for you and for Whole Foods Market?
So I think about that question two ways. One is when I think about test and learn and discovery, I think about innovation, and I think about work that actually happens at Whole Foods outside of the transformation team, like new innovations in our customer experience, innovations in the way that we interact with suppliers. So some of that innovation is, most all of that innovation sits outside of transformation at Whole Foods. Internal to transformation, we think about, we run what's called like tiger teams. So while we have a set of governance structure in place around all of our larger transformation programs, inside of those, we might have a tiger team. So one of the things that we're trying to attack right now from a tiger team perspective is like shrink. So we set up these really, so it's food waste. So we set up these really small experiments to move quickly. So think about an agile team running a 2-week sort of sprint. Every 2 weeks, like we're taking something into the store, like a store level operations change, to see like what impact can we make, right? We've got all the data that backs it up. We realize, we set our targets. We think we can reduce shrink by this certain amount of percentage. And then we try to go after that in these really small increments, which of course for us as a grocery retailer helps to improve our profitability and our revenue.
If we layer on experimenting in the test and learn with costs and speed to value, how does that factor in?
Well, there's a storyline running through my head because we're just going through this in the last couple of weeks where we asked for a really sizable investment in this particular area and then came back to something smaller. Now we've set up these increments of investment so that over a shorter period of time, not in 2 weeks, but over month to month, we would go back and say, okay, we committed to by X date, we could hit this target. When we hit that target, we go back and say, okay, now give us the next bit of investment so we can go realize the next set of value. So we're really we're incrementing towards that value in really small chunks, which at first made me feel really uncomfortable. I'm like, give us everything we're asking for. Like, give us this whole 18 months of funding that we're asking for. And which is like, how can you not? Like you said, E-team, you've said this is the most important thing. This is the big thing we've got to go after. And so why wouldn't you give us all the investment we're asking for? But now that we're in it, it makes so much more sense to okay, we get to go back and say, hey, look, this is the progress. Okay, we're going to go away, make some more progress, come back. And so in that way, it has been useful to take that approach versus this longer multi-month project where it's a long time before we actually see the return.
I think it works. What you've described is proving to be an industry best practice around getting a flywheel of value creation going. And anytime I've seen that flywheel in motion, it's really hard to slow it down, which is a good thing, right? And so more opportunities present themselves, and then more benefit happens. And that doesn't mean every initiative pays in 90 days or everything's a home run, but it means as the portfolio is working at the right level across the enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that way of thinking. I'd love to take the next question that came in around talent, and how do you think about deploying talent against these efforts, and how you think about talent more broadly in the spirit of transformation?
Well, there's a couple of different ways that I think about talent. One is when I came into this role, I looked around and said, there are some people that I know at Whole Foods that need to be here with me. And so I asked favors, right? I cashed in some favors with those team members and peers that I had that were thinking about agility and change and how to be leaders in that space. So a lot of fearless, like organizational credibility and somewhat just like a fearlessness to fearless of rejection. I, however, like have a huge fear of rejection, but like I need people around me who will like keep going in, even if no is always the answer, right? They're like, well, let's see if it stands this way. Let's see if it stands that way.
Or people willing to get kicked in the face.
Yeah. Yes. Oh gosh, I know. Now I've put that out there into the universe. It's going to come back to me tenfold. The other thing about talent is, so my team is like we have three separate teams in my transformation team. One is like the transformation program managers, the other is continuous improvement, and the other is enterprise risk. And so like the continuous improvement team, I mean, those are just like beautiful mind sorts of folks who are all about process and data. They're all like Lean Six Sigma and DMAIC, and they say all the things, and I'm like, oh, I got to go look that up. I need to learn more about that. I need them to enroll me in the training classes that they do. And so this blend of talent within transformation I really think about, do I have the right blend of talent in transformation that brings to bear the highly analytical, those who are really good at communicating, right? So a lot of times, like we'll partner our continuous improvement team with somebody in the program team, and like together they make this beautiful kind of yin and yang of then how we show up as a team. But I want to take a pause, Dana, and just make sure like I'm answering the question. 'Cause like talent can mean like a lot of different things, like thinking about like talent, like external talent, bringing in, and like how you shape your team. So I just want to, and maybe Rich, you want to get in on this too?
Well, I think your answer is a really good one about this portfolio of capabilities across a team. And I think as individuals think about growing their own careers, just as you described, being a technologist that then leaned into business and transformation, people should be thinking about what are the right moments to stretch themselves. If you're a business analyst that needs to kind of lean into technology or vice versa, it will make you a better part of a team. And then over time, as you're building teams, it'll help you spot, do you have the right portfolio of capabilities? Just as I think one of the reasons Tracy's been able to assemble this team is she's seen all sides of transformation. And so both as a manager and leader and as an individual growing your career, you should be thinking about those portfolio of capabilities, and as the yin and yang, they're in balance.
And you answered it exactly where I believe the question was coming from, and where I was thinking, which is, how do you think about talent to deploy? I think the other side of it is the organization in which you are bringing this transformation and kind of rallying around your agenda. So I would love to go there next, which is around culture. How do you mentioned kind of test and learn and experimentation, and in my words, what I heard you say, kind of bite-sized efforts where you're kind of getting the investment, going out, proving the success, coming back and going back out again. How do you create a culture of more individuals willing to go experiment like that, test and learn, be willing to kind of fail and get up and be fearless and go again?
Yeah, it's interesting because I experience Whole Foods as being that way when urgency is created externally. Meaning we react really well as a company when there's an external force that's putting that urgency on us. And so like, I know it's there, like I know it's in the fabric, but we design these programs not in that way, right? We design a program to run over like a year to 18 months with this very slow roll of like decision making and milestone and then this and that. And it's like, it's almost counter to how I experience the things that we do really well. So what I aim to do and my team as well is to shift that model, to show how like it doesn't have to be an external force that's imposing the urgency, but like internally, by telling the stories of how we do it with external force, like internally, like just building up that confidence to say, look, we can do this. Like we did it here. And some of that is like in times of urgent change from an external force, the decision-making tree gets real slim, right? So it's not like Tracy's boss and then her boss's boss and then their boss's boss, like all of them, like we got to run the decisions all the way up the pole. It's like that decision goes straight up the pole as fast as it possibly can. So we're trying to like figure out like how do we incorporate that into everyday decision making, and so that like we just have to be faster. And so like we're going through right now and saying, okay, this is the way a program and a governance around that program looks today. Here's the way it would look if we meet these three objectives of like increasing the speed of decision making and improving the fidelity of our decisions, and the delivering faster. And so like, what does it look like? And I mean, it's like we're going from like 50 people in a governance structure to like 12. And so that's one of the ways, like internally, just trying to increase that agility through the way that we think about governance and the way that we operate as an organization. It's still important for us and for me, being part of Whole Foods, that we not lose sight of the stakeholders, right? So got to count on, even if, like, let's say we're moving from 15 to whatever that smaller, or 50 to whatever that smaller number is, we can't just exclude people, right? We can't exclude stakeholder groups. So we still have to keep that in mind. So how can we do that, but do that in a more agile way where we're moving faster? Because we've proven we can. We just now have to work it into the everyday.
I think, and that there's such a interesting moment in time where we've just lived through this big acute disruption with the pandemic, and lots of companies made significant progress doing things differently, whether it's work or engaging with customers, new business models. And what were the changes? You know, you described the decision trees and timing narrowing, risk appetite changed. And so what were the things that worked that we can then bring into the steady state? Because now there's going to be these smaller, unnoticeable disruptions. Let's apply the same practices that were so successful during an acute disruption to those. So really interesting moment of reflection and opportunity for companies.
Yeah, it is. And I think for us, being highly customer centric, so we, my experience has been like moving towards this place of we became process centric and governance centric and moved away from being customer centric. And so what are the, like, how do we change the way we work to get back there? Because like that is truly, like, when we think about like the opening question about the origin of Whole Foods, I mean, it was about the customer, and it always needs to be and has been about the customer. But sometimes we get a little bit distracted by like it needing to be about, oh, we all have to do the same process, which is important. Compliance is important. All those things are really critical. But it's like, it doesn't have to be just about that. Like, we're doing those things and those activities in support of the customer as our stakeholder.
I love it. I feel like we could go on for another 2 hours. That would be my preference. I have another 18 questions I'd like to ask. So everybody hunker down, get your snacks. I'm teasing. It is a good time to wrap around reflection, and in the spirit of Whole Food market tradition, would love to invite all three of us to close with an appreciation, and I can begin. I'm grateful to be here today with the two of you and with everyone who's joined us in this really fun discussion. And I pinch myself often that I get to be part of incredible shifts in business and in the world that have a significant impact, and often positive impact, on how people live their lives. So grateful to be talking about a little bit of how that even happens today. Rich, I'll pass it to you, and Tracy can bring us home.
Yeah, I'll just build briefly. I'm grateful that, you know, this is a moment in time in the economy and in society where big, important changes can make a lot of difference. And, you know, we and the audience, we all have a seat at the table to make that happen. So very grateful, you know, to be doing what we do at this moment in time.
That's nice, Rich. I like that. Okay, I have a few appreciations. I'm gonna start with my team. I have a wonderful, amazing team. Some of them were part of this organization before I got here, and others have joined me. And I just think that my team is amazing, and I want to appreciate them for everything that they bring and their mix of talents that they bring. Of course, I want to appreciate my leaders. My leaders at Whole Foods. Like, I wouldn't be able to be having this really wonderful conversation with you, Rich and Dana, without their support and belief in me. I'm grateful for my family, right? We go back to that, why did I take that risk? What was that? Like, I had to have support. Like, my husband had to say, yes, if this doesn't work out, like, we're going to be okay. Like, giving me the financial security that I needed to be able to go and no longer be the SME, like no longer be the subject matter expert, but be in the learning mode. And last, certainly not least, my Deloitte advisory team, who have essentially been there since the beginning, from the moment that you all invited me to come up to Dallas and go to DU and the greenhouse room. So thank you, Dana and Tom and Dean and Sagar and Ann. I feel like anytime I have a question, you all are there. So I'm so appreciative for the knowledge that you all just pour into me. So thank you for that.
Well, gosh, do you end every call with people blushing? Because I'm like,
it's either laughs or tears.
Oh,
you guys are lucky I didn't shed any tears today.
Well, I'm grateful for your insights today, and your time, and for the hundreds of you who've tuned in. Thank you all for joining us today. Rich, any last comments before we officially wrap?
We'll be back at it in a month or so. So stay tuned. We have another great session planned for after Thanksgiving. So we'll see you then.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.